Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This will be an on-the-record press call. I am Kristen Kroll, and I'm the Executive Director of Fair Share America, and we are an organization that is harnessing people power all over the country, working in 38 states with over 500 partners to make the billionaires and corporations pay their fair share in taxes so all of our communities have what they need to thrive. Today, we're obviously here focused on what is happening in Washington, D.C. as it relates to the healthcare coverage of millions of Americans and what's at stake in the national debate. And we're so pleased to have our allies and partners with us, especially Congressman Pat Ryan, a Democrat from New York District 18, who is really the true populist leader that our country is looking for right now. And we want to thank him for joining us and thanking him for the work that he's doing, especially last week introducing the Patients Over Profits Act that would lower healthcare costs and improve care for our families and our communities. He also spends a lot of time working with our partners in New York State. The Invest in New York Coalition is a campaign with many state partners that are doing the work day in and day out to organize people to make sure that they have a voice in shaping the policies that our representatives are leading. And so thank you very much, Congressman, for your work. We're also going to hear today from a small business owner, Kyle LaFond, who is part of the Main Street Alliance as a small business owner and will share the impacts of what Congress is debating right now on those who rely on the ACA for their healthcare coverage. And then lastly, we'll hear from my ally and our good friend, Adam Hoyer, who is the Protect Our Care's National Organizing Director. And just thank you to Protect Our Care for being a co-host of this today. So let's get things started. So first, I just want to share the perspective that Fair Share America brings to this fight. And I recently spent the last 10 weeks crisscrossing America on a bus tour called Stop the Billionaire Giveaway Bus Tour, where I had the enormous privilege to hear from thousands of the American public who are angry and furious about what is going on right now, especially as it relates to healthcare coverage. Right now, there are so many people across this country that are terrified. They're terrified for themselves. They're terrified for a loved one. And they don't know exactly who to turn to, but they do know exactly what was done in the big ugly law that the GOP passed. They know that millions of Americans are right now facing these kinds of scary times at their kitchen tables, at their offices, with their providers. And rather than getting the healthcare that we've all paid into, elected leaders have decided to redirect that money and give more tax cuts to the wealthy. And I'm here on behalf of the American public to say it's inexcusable. It's also a story that I know well, and this is a personal fight for me as well. I know what medical debt does to a family. And nearly 20 years ago, I was a single working mom, and it was exactly one dental bill, one bill of $886 that sent my family into a financial crisis, where ultimately we lost our home to foreclosure. So we are not numbers on a spreadsheet. This is an epidemic. This is a major crisis that is facing millions of Americans, and we're here to shed light on this today. So thank you for joining us. And at this point, I will turn the conversation over to Representative Ryan.
Thank you very much, Kristen, for having me and organizing and sharing your story, which is powerful. And I think it's a good time to have this conversation. All of us members of Congress are back home, out of the DC bubble and on the ground. And I think the bus tour you guys did is so important. I was saying that earlier. And anybody who's actually listening to their constituents, which unfortunately most Republicans are not right now because they're not even willing to hold town halls, but anybody willing to listen to their constituents and to the American people knows that it's very clear what's happening on the ground. This trend was already headed in this direction before this big ugly bill, which I have called the big ugly betrayal. And now to be home and start to see the effects of these cuts come into place, it's heart wrenching. And stories like yours, Kristen, are happening across my district and across the country. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts on that. At the end of the day, I think there's two components here that we need to be talking about: care and cost. They're obviously interrelated, but thought about differently. First and fundamentally, I know this whole coalition just deeply, firmly believes it is fundamentally American to have great, not okay, not decent, but great healthcare that we can actually afford. And that should not be something we ever settle for. And then that brings in the cost piece. And so far, where we're primarily seeing the pressure in the system, of course, access remains hard, but cost is what is just absolutely crushing folks right now, just like you shared in your family. And I think it's so important at this moment, especially while we're back home and both listening to, but being held accountable by our constituents, that folks across the country understand if action is not taken, tens of millions of Americans will see their cost for healthcare skyrocket because of the direction set by President Trump, by the Republican majority in both the House and the Senate. But it's not too late if we rally, as I know this coalition is doing, to stop this and to get this back under control. I know, the perspective I want to bring quickly is that it's easy to get stuck in, especially that sort of at the national level, the big macro numbers, which can almost seem essentially too big to comprehend. I mean, $1 trillion, over $1 trillion in cuts to a fundamental component of our healthcare system, Medicaid, which especially in New York and in my state and in our district is going to be devastating. And just last week, we actually saw the beginning effects of this as the state had to announce that almost 20,000 people in my district are going to lose access to the New York State Essential Plan, which is our Medicaid backed plan. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately, in anticipation of what's coming. The other big number that's certainly impossible for me to comprehend is trillions of dollars in tax breaks for the ultra wealthy and big corporations. So I know we all know this on the call, but when I'm talking to constituents, what I remind them is the Republicans are fully in charge, and they just made a choice to give more tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations at the expense of all of our healthcare, both access, but particularly cost. And at the local level in my district, I just wanted to share one example of how that plays out. Folks sitting around a kitchen table in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City, a 60-year-old couple earning $80,000 a year household, which is about the median household income in my district. Because of the actions already taken, they will see their annual premium go up $940, which is a 162% increase just from last year. I mean, that is just fundamentally, sorry, somebody's waving to me in my office here. That is fundamentally wrong and fundamentally un-American. And I know as people hear about this, they're going to be righteously indignant and pushing back, which is why this coalition is so important. So I'll just wrap by saying that it is on us in the coming days and weeks and months to make sure that this message gets out, to just share the facts. There's no need to unfortunately apply any spin here because the numbers are devastating. And for folks in my district and across the country having that conversation at the kitchen table, we need to be their advocate and their ally. The reason I feel optimistic, and with this, is we are, despite how it feels at some moments, we are very much still in a democracy. And in a democracy, when you are with the people, on the side of the people, you win. And we are on the side of the people who believe that healthcare costs should be coming down, not going up. That tax breaks should be going to the middle class and the working class, not the ultra rich and big corporations. So as long as we continue to strongly, forcefully articulate that, I believe we can, in this moment, win that battle and send a message that with all the harm being done, if we fight strongly on this point, on the point of healthcare affordability specifically, that we can win this battle and send a broader message of all the harms and overreach of the Trump administration. So thank you again for having me. Thanks to all the partners and allies here on this call and across the country, and looking forward to hearing from everybody else.
Thank you so much. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle LaFond, who's joining us from Wisconsin, which is also my home state, to share about how this is impacting you. So Kyle, thank you so much for being with us.
Of course, Kristen, thank you for having me and thank you for putting this together. A huge fan of Representative Ryan, and from I've come to understand the past few days looking at his background. So even from Wisconsin, I'm cheering from afar and all you're doing for the American people. So thank you for your service. Just a couple of points I want to make here today as a small business owner. I own a couple of niche manufacturing companies here in the Midwest. And as a business owner, the number one thing I always concern myself with is the health, safety, and well-being of my employees. Of course, it all comes down to healthcare. Being a small business owner, of course, I've looked for options for healthcare for years, and it is an impossible task to find something that is appropriate and covers all of my people. So we rely on the marketplace, myself as an individual and all of my employees. You have to understand that as a small business owner, the passage of the ACA really leveled the playing field in terms of being able to keep employees that otherwise would have had to look for jobs with larger employees that could provide that type of healthcare. So the ACA was actually a tremendous boon to us in terms of just having good quality people be available. With the end of the subsidies, there's a lot of things that are on the line, a lot of disastrous consequences for myself and my employees. When you think about it, more people today, because of rising prices, inflation, everything else, are living paycheck to paycheck. And to ask the American worker to absorb one more substantial payment every single month, as the congressman said, it's just unconscionable. Everything that this administration has done, they said they're trying to bring back American manufacturing, make America great. There hasn't been a single policy or executive order that has helped American employers or the American worker. So the hypocrisy needs to end. And as the congressman said, we need to call out people on the facts, what's actually happening on the ground and what's going to affect American families. So for us, we really applaud all the work that this group is doing, all the work that Democrats are doing in DC and on the state level to make sure these subsidies continue, because this is a crucial moment in American history. And we have to decide, are we for the people or are we for the billionaires and big businesses? And so I'm very happy that we're having these conversations and we're taking this message to the streets. And so I'm right here with you, and looking forward to doing whatever we can to make sure that these subsidies continue and there's fair play for everyone involved here. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kyle. Now we're going to hear from Adam Hoyer, who is our co-host of today's press call. Adam, thanks so much for being an ally in this work and everything that your organization is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Good morning. My thanks to Congressman Ryan. We are huge fans of Congressman Ryan over at Protector Care. Really appreciate him joining us and championing this important issue. And thank you, Fair Share America, for bringing us together today. We are also huge fans of bus tours. Y'all did a great one. It is not as easy as you made it look. But as you mentioned, my name's Adam Hoyer. I'm the organizing director at Protector Care. And we're here today because American healthcare is in crisis again, a crisis created entirely by Donald Trump and congressional Republicans and their ongoing all-out assaults on our healthcare system. They've slashed Medicaid. They're driving rural hospitals off of a cliff. They've ended health insurance tax credits for working people, and now they're threatening to shut down the government in order to do it. And if Republicans continue to insist on taking away these tax credits, 4 million Americans are going to lose their health care altogether. Over 20 million Americans are going to see their premiums skyrocket by 75% or more. And this, as working Americans are already feeling the squeeze from this administration and this Republican Congress, senseless tariffs driving the cost of everything up, Trump's inflation making groceries and day-to-day costs virtually unaffordable. And now Republicans have decided that this is a good time to force working folks to pay even more for their health care than they already are. And Republicans have no problem giving billionaires and corporations a permanent break on their taxes. They'll move heaven and earth. They'll add trillions to the deficit. They'll cut Medicaid for millions of people in order to do it. But when it comes to giving working families a permanent break on their healthcare costs, it's a totally different story for them. They'd rather side with insurance companies. They'd rather shut down the entire government instead. And it's madness. You know, I'm from Florida, and here in Donald Trump's adopted home state, this is going to cause nothing short of a healthcare crisis. It's going to be bad everywhere, but especially in these states that refused to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, it is going to be a catastrophe. We here in Florida, we have a huge population that gains insurance through the ACA marketplace, somewhere between 4 and 4.5 million Floridians, all subject to these Republican price hikes now. And in fact, the average annual premium cost is going to increase by more than $1,800 in Florida in 2026 if these tax credits expire. And all told, according to the CBO, around 1.5 million Floridians are going to lose health care coverage entirely, thanks to Republican premium increases in the big ugly bill. It's devastating. It's really scary for folks right now. At the top of the call, Kristen mentioned the fear that families are facing around this right now. And we see it too in states across the country where our teams are holding events every week, every day. We hear from people all the time, hardworking people, small business owners like Kyle, families already struggling to make ends meet, and folks with really challenging health problems and medical costs. This is the last thing that they need right now. Hardworking Americans can't afford yet another major hit to their wallets, and thankfully, Democrats, they're right not to vote for a budget that will take health care away from millions and instead give trillions in tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. Everyone deserves quality, affordable, and accessible healthcare coverage, but instead, you know, it sure looks like Republicans are willing to shut down the ACA tax credits. They're willing to shut down the government. They're willing to shut down affordable healthcare for millions of Americans, just like they're willingly shutting down hundreds of rural hospitals across the country that rely on Medicaid funding. And don't buy their spin on this. Republicans control the House, the Senate, the White House. And if the government shuts down, it's going to be because Republicans chose to shut it down rather than pass a budget that serves the American people. So it's time for Republicans to clean up the mess that they created and extend the tax credits permanently and protect the health and well-being of millions across this country. As Congressman Ryan said, cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save our health care. And my thanks again to the congressman for standing up for people who need some relief right now. And my thanks again to Fair Share America for bringing us all together.